Last week there was not a video because I had an electrician out at my property. And while Kenai wasn't too happy about all the noise he was making, I sure was because he was taking care of some pretty serious electrical issues here in the cabin, like exposed wires, live wires that is, that needed to be terminated, and also checking on a potential electrical fire hazard that I thought I had, but turned out I didn't, and also moving and installing some new outlets for me. Now that the electrician has taken care of most of the things that I needed done, including installing an outlet at the back of this room, which means I can plug in my freezer where I want it without having the cord drape across the room or hanging underneath the clothesline, I need to start putting in the wall back there. But before I do that, I have one more thing that I'd like to get done. If you've been watching the videos that I've been posting over the past few years, you know that I've had an issue with mice and other small creatures making their way into the cabin. In fact, when I took down the paneling in this room, I did actually find a mouse nest behind the walls. I did find the point of entry, which I sealed up, and along with any other air gaps, but that doesn't guarantee that I'm not going to get a mouse or something else in these walls again. And in fact, one of the things that has the potential for doing a lot of damage in the cabin and could enter in through the walls is carpenter ants. Carpenter ants are a huge issue in Alaska, and I'd like to, prevent them from surviving in the walls, eating through my cabin, and also I don't want a mouse getting in there and dying and stinking up the walls or creating havoc in other ways. And I know a lot of you would suggest that I get a cat. Well, a cat doesn't do anything about the ants. And also, one of the critters that could potentially enter the cabin, which I recently just had a small infestation of, are shrews. Shrews are very small mammals. They're about an inch in length, and they're venomous. Now, they could pose a threat to a small animal like a cat. They don't really pose a whole lot of issue for humans. Their bite is more of an irritant than anything. Nonetheless, I don't want them in the cabin, nor mice, nor those carpenter ants. And so what I plan on doing today is actually putting something in these walls that could do all of those things in. Along the floorboard, I'm spreading a mixture of equal parts flour, baking soda, borax, and diatomaceous earth. This will act as not only a poison, but also an insecticide. Anything that comes in contact with this is going to desiccate. Now that that's done, I can begin to assemble this wall. This wall should go up fairly easily because it is 8 feet long, and so are my planks. That is provided that the walls on opposite side of it, this one behind me and the one behind the camera, are perfectly plumb, meaning they're perfectly upright, and they're not encroaching on that 8-foot span. So provided that's the case, I should not have to make any additional cuts other than the boards that are going around this new outlet in the wall. But before I install my wall, I want to make sure that I've taken care of a couple other things. The first thing is that I have a piece of 1/4-inch plywood here, just a scrap of this, that I'm putting underneath this first plank. And that's going to allow for some expansion and contraction in the wall as the humidity levels change in the cabin. The other thing is that I want to make sure that my wall is level. So I'm using my 4-foot level here and just putting that along the span of the board here. And luckily I do have this level. So now that that is done, I can go ahead and tack this into place. And I'm just using some finish nails to do that. And again, I'm driving this in at an angle, 45-degree down, starting at this bevel here. And I'll also be tacking this first board in at the base of it. All other boards, though, are just going to get tacked in along that bevel. And this wall should go up fairly quickly. I now need to deal with this outlet in the wall, which meant that I had to cut a couple boards. These should be the only boards that I have to cut because everything else has been fitting in beautifully. Because this outlet has a bit of a beveled edge to it, I needed to cut these two boards with a 45-degree slant. Hopefully you can see that there. I need to cut that so that when I slide these boards in, they'll sit up nice and tight against the sides of the outlet. And then underneath it, I'm just using a scrap block. And all of this is being done so that when I put the faceplate on, the faceplate can sit in nice and tight. Now I could have taken a jigsaw and cut out the opening that I needed, but really this was easier. I'm getting cleaner cuts by doing this than trying to freehand a jigsaw on these boards. But I will probably have to use the jigsaw when I get to the next board over the top. Now, I'm not being quite the perfectionist in this room that I was when I was doing my bathroom, even though this room is a test and trial run for me. And ultimately, I want everything to look nice. But at the end of the day, it's a utility room. Now, that is going to come back to haunt me, I'm sure, because of some of the other things I'd like to do in this room. But you'll have to stick around to see what those are. So I started to notice, and I'm hoping on my camera, I started to notice that the wall started to curve out a bit, and I was losing my nailer, so the board in which I'm nailing the planks to. So I had to come in and add some 2x4s on the inside of the wall to ensure that I had some integrity to the structure. And then also, I don't know if you can see, but on that side of the wall, I had to add in an additional board because the wall is actually leaning out. So I should have framed up this wall as well, but I'm making it work nonetheless. So I'll have to see how things go as I progress, but I might need to add some additional nailers as I finish working up this wall. Now that I have the wall up, I just have this back corner to deal with. And here you can see that I have this pipe coming in from the outside. This pipe, I believe, was the stack pipe from when the previous owners had this room as a bathroom. A stack pipe, I believe, provides back pressure for plumbing drainage. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a plumber. Obviously, I live in a dry cabin. Nonetheless, I needed to find a way to cut out around that for the next piece of trim that goes in here, or the next piece of board, actually, not trim. So what I did is I found something which was just the ring from a large mouth mason jar that fit the diameter of this perfectly. And then I traced that out on the back side of my board and then used my jigsaw to cut it out. And this is what it looks like now. Now, it's not going to fit perfectly, I don't think, but it'll do. Because again, it's in the back corner behind the pantry shelf. You can see the pantry shelf there. And only I and you are going to know about it. So the other thing is I might have to cut off the back of the groove here in order to get this in. But I'm going to try, sorry, the camera's moving because I'm holding you in midair. But I'm going to try to just slide this over the top and push it in. And voila, that board is in. It's not perfect. But it'll do. It's not going anywhere. And I left this here because otherwise it'd have a big hole in the side of the cabin. It does have some screening over the outside of it. And the reason I didn't cap it off on the outside is because this actually acts as a fresh air return in the cabin. I'm trying to button this place up and make it, as tight as possible. But I still need to make sure that I have some fresh air coming in here so that I don't ever asphyxiate myself should there be a problem with the wood stove or other ways of carbon monoxide to build up in the cabin. So this does provide some fresh air into the cabin at all times. And because cold air falls, it really isn't letting in cold air. The air coming out of here, I could take a heat gun and put it on here, but the air coming out of here is actually probably 1 to 2 degrees lower than the air in the cabin itself right now. And believe it or not, the cabin feels quite warm at the moment. So even with me sitting right here, and let's see what the outside temperature says. Just over my shoulder here, you can see the outdoor thermometer, and it says it's about 28 degrees out here. But like I said, it's not cold. I know everybody says that I'm built differently, and maybe I am, but the weather here is not the same as it is everywhere else, or the temperature does not feel like it does anywhere else. Maybe that's because it's so dry. I don't know. But 28 degrees outside, and inside, it's not cold either, despite that cold air intake. With the wall being up, now I can move on to installing a sweater drying rack. I originally thought about installing one in this area here between the wall and the end of the pantry. I've seen the ones that are on pull-out drawers or slides that you can pull out. The only issue is that where I'm standing right now is where the chest freezer is going to go. And so it would make difficult to get back here, leaning over the freezer to get in there to the dryers, at least at that angle. So instead, what I came up with is a sweater drying rack that's going to run the length of this wall and sit over the top of the chest freezer. But it's a really simple construction, and I think it's going to work out well for me. There's one issue with it though, because it is going over the chest freezer and I need to be able to open the chest freezer without racking my knuckles and getting into the freezer without hitting my head on top of that. I need to set it up high enough where it will be a little bit difficult to get up there to put the sweaters on, but a step stool should come in handy. To make the sweater drying rack, the first thing I did was coat all the wood in Early American Stain and then tung oil. And you can see here that I'm using 1x3s and 1x2s in my construction. The 1x2 is going to get attached on the inside of the frame. I am just making sure that it clears the end support. And then I will come back with my finish nailer and tack that down all the way on both sides of the frame. I want to make sure that it is perfectly aligned with the underside of the frame. I'm using 1 1/4 inch finish nails, which are just long enough that they don't go through the other side of the wood. But here you can see that my wood on the other side is not quite straight. It's got a little bit of a bow to it. So as I progress my way down, I'm going to have to finesse it into place. But making sure that that is straight and flush against the bottom will be essential as I proceed. And then I took some brackets that I'd purchased off of Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description below to attach the corners together. And then also came back in with my finish nailer to add some additional support in those corners. The next thing I need to do is add a center support. Here I'm just using another 1x3, which I've centered in between the sides. And then I'm pre-drilling some holes here so that I can attach that center support with some screws. I'm putting 2 screws on each end of this center support. Well, I got the frame up into place. I did scratch up my wall just a little bit. I'm sure you can see it all the way over there at the very edge. I can touch that up with some stain. I'm not worried about it, but at least it's nice and tight fitting in here. I am going to pre-drill some holes and screw this into the wall. I have a really bad habit of nailing things into place, such as these pantry shelves and the clothesline that I had taken down previously. Because the clothesline had been nailed in and secured to the floorboards up above, the original floorboards, which are just a 1/2 inch thick, 5/8 inch thick rough sawn cedar boards, I could not take them out without destroying those boards. So I had to cut them down and basically whack them out of place. I'm not really looking forward to this thing dropping. Yeah, like that's fine, but it dropping is not what I'm looking forward to. I don't have a way of bracing it. Maybe I do. I got an idea. So this should do the trick. I'm going to feed it through the holes where the bolts were for the clothesline, and then loop it over a screw or a nail that's up here, and that way it won't fall and hit my toes, at least while I'm doing this. It's still going to fall, but I should not get injured by it when it does, hopefully. Well, is that going to work? Can I bust that out of there? I forgot the stud's in my way. So now all I need to do is take a hammer to it, I guess, to bring it down. But it's still not going to fall, so that's good. All right, that will work. I would like the opportunity to be able to take this out, though I don't know that I'll ever get it out now that it's wedged in here as tightly as it is. But my plan is going forward to make things more easily removable than what I've used or done in the past. So before I do anything, though, I need to make sure this is level. I did add some additional supports here in the middle, well, at 3 different intervals, evenly spaced apart, to help pull the sides in closer together and keep everything square. So let me get this leveled out and I'll show you how it works. Woo, good catch. Almost level. I just have to knock that corner down just a hair bit more, and then I can begin to attach this to the wall. She is level. As I go to attach this to the wall, I want to try to hit a stud where possible. And so I'm just trying to identify where the nails are that I use to attach the boards. And then I'm just going to draw an imaginary line coming up from there and come in with a drill and a little drill bit on here to make a pilot hole. And that way I make sure that I don't split my board when I screw in the long screw that's going to hold this, you know, in the wall. Like I said, this is wedged into place. It's going to be hard to move as it is, but I need all the extra assurances I can get. Even though it's not going to have that much weight on it, I still don't want it coming down. On the opposite side, though, I don't really have anything for this short end to attach to because this is just loose paneling here. It's tacked into some shelving behind it, but the shelf is about 6 inches above and 12 inches below where the sweater drying rack is sitting. So instead, I'm attaching it directly into the pantry, and I'm just using some long construction screws. Again, there's not going to be a whole lot of weight on here, but I want to make sure this thing doesn't move on me. At this point, you're probably wondering, how is this a sweater drying rack? Surely this isn't going to hold anything with these big open cavernous areas here, considering sweaters need to lay flat to dry so they don't stretch out. Well, before I show you that, I do want to also say that if you're still watching the video at this point, you obviously like what you see. And I would appreciate it, that is, if you could give this video a thumbs up. Not only does it help YouTube promote my channel and this video, but it also will help YouTube send you other videos from other creators that are similar in style to this one. So it doesn't cost you anything to do that. And while you're hitting that like button, let me show you what the catch is with this sweater drying rack. The catch? Wire shelving. I bought 4 sections of 4-foot long shelving to put in here. Now, as I mentioned throughout this video, that this wall is essentially 8 feet long from wall to wall, but the framing ate up a portion of that length. And so I did have to trim 2 of the sections down, and I just did that with some simple bolt cutters. Now, this isn't finished, unfortunately. I do have to go get some tulle fabric to put over here. If you're not familiar with what tulle is, it's like a fine mesh, usually used for petticoats or wedding veils, things like that. But I'll be making a sleeve that'll stretch taut over these shelves, and that will keep the sweaters that are damp or wet from basically taking on the pattern of the shelving. Otherwise, gravity's basically going to pull them through these sections here. But once that's done, then I should be able to go ahead and use this sweater drying rack. It is 2 feet across, so all of my sweaters should fit on here nicely. I could probably get 4 to 5 sweaters on here, depending upon the sweater. I'm thinking that this is going to work out fantastic for me. And like I said, I do have to use the step stool that I'm standing on now to get up here to maneuver things, but that's not really a problem for me. And it allows me enough height underneath it for my chest freezer, as well as storage for things like my broom, dustpan, and vacuum, things that have not really had a true home in the cabin until now. Be sure to join me next week, where I'll be answering your questions and comments. Until then, stay safe and take care.